Well, good evening. I had no idea what kind of crowd this was going to be, and you've exceeded my expectations already. Thank you, Pastor Jeff and Cindy, for having me tonight. This is just such a privilege and an honor. And yes, I do speak to 12-year-olds. Their expectations are much, much lower. And their sense of humor is much more inappropriate. So this could be a good change for me. I am just hoping to share my heart with you, to let you see a little bit into my life, to bring a little hope in places that sometimes we're afraid to talk about, or that what I like to call the dark places, the places that people prefer to hide. And so I am choosing to trust you with mine, because I believe it will honor God and it will honor His work in my life. And so in order for me to get started on that, I do give a disclaimer. I've only given it on YouTube before, so you are the next audience to hear this. I am not a doctor or a therapist. I will mention some medical things that have happened in my life, but I am no expert, and if I screw up the details, I apologize ahead of time. I do not claim to be an expert on anybody's experience but mine. Like I said, this is the story of how God brought hope into my life when I was in a place that was not very hopeful. And I am not used to this iPad. Good Friday. Good Friday to me is a dark hour. And as I was praying for this and thinking about it, I thought, why do we celebrate Good Friday? Good Friday is the day that it seemed like evil got to have its day. That was the day that they took down Jesus. And how are we celebrating the evil day, the dark day? Because they didn't know he was coming back up. They didn't know that this was part of the master plan. They just knew that Jesus was gone. And if I had been one of those disciples, this would have been the culmination of a series of very discouraging and distressing, demoralizing events. Their leader was betrayed by one of their own people. When he was probably most in his time of need, they all took off for the hills. We are out of here. We don't even know you. And they were afraid for their own lives, and now their leader had been killed. And in John chapter 20, it says they were up in an upper room with the doors locked because they were scared. And I may not be able to relate to that exact situation, but I know what it's like to want to close the door, lock the door, and turn off the light, because things are scary inside and things feel scary outside. And so I want to lead into it that way because I believe the disciples give us a human connection to the death of Jesus. That we talk about it in a big, expansive, glorious way, but that just had to be the most horrible night ever. And so for me to tell you my story and my background, I should start with my family because my family is awesome. They are like the best. And when I tell people my story and I forget to say, and my family is awesome, they're like, so were you abused, Hannah? Are you okay? No, I wasn't. I was very cherished and respected and encouraged to be all that I could be for God. My dad was the pastor and I could try anything I wanted. I could volunteer anywhere I wanted and was strongly encouraged to do so. But I love my family, and I would strongly say I came out on the other side so well because I always knew they were in my corner. So I want to honor my family and to let you know that my story is truly mine. It is not a family dysfunction story, nor was I in the military and traumatized, just to clear that up as well. However, I personally have a history of anxiety. I was that tight little child that wanted everything to be perfect, and I cried when it wasn't. And the grade school teacher thought maybe there was abuse in our family, but there was still not. And I could say anecdotally, there's a good chance that's a genetic thing for us. I don't have any proof, but I can tell you honestly that my body doesn't make enough serotonin to keep me where I should be. I'm part of the human condition. Things are not perfect. When I was 12 years old, however, my anxiety blew out and became post-traumatic stress disorder. I used to throw the afternoon paper here in Lawrence, back when there was such a thing. And during one of my rounds, A man I did not know and never saw again trapped me behind some apartment buildings and sexually traumatized me. And that completely changed my world, because now things were not safe, and trusting was not safe. And the best way I knew how to deal with that was to bury it as far in my head as I could get it, so I would never have to look at it again, ever. Side note, that's not healthy. That's not a good choice. But it began to blow out in funny ways in other parts of my life. I tried to hyper-manage things. Because I didn't feel the negative emotion, I didn't feel strong positive emotion either. People thought I was awesomely balanced, and I was probably really out of whack. Again, my family is awesome. Remember that. And I've lost my place. When I was 19, this was further enhanced because at the church that my dad was the pastor, a 40-year-old man wrote me a love letter expressing why I was the love of his life while he was supposed to be dating an age-appropriate woman in our church. And just the way that came to be and that way I felt it was underhanded and unexpected and inappropriate, and that he had violated my safe place at church. That was supposed to be my other safe place. And so it was firmly ingrained in me that life was not safe, that guys were dangerous and untrustworthy, and therefore there was not much dating that happened in my life at all. But my head still knew things were there, even though I was not expressing them. And so, as I like to say, life explodes, and mine exploded, even before I knew what was going on. When I was 18 years old, I started having daily, massive, chronic migraines, the kind that knock you out and make you wish you were in the dark. But because I'm a stubborn person, I just took the big painkiller my doctor gave me and soldiered through. But that pain had to go somewhere. And I would get prayer after prayer after prayer. God, make the migraines go away. And they did not. And I was a little frustrated by that. But I soldiered on. I got a job. I became a responsible, earning adult. Started teaching. Decided I should probably do some online dating because it was about time for me to find a husband, even though I thought that was a horrible idea. I knew in the Christian thing I should do that. So I was going to do that. And my dad had even given me the eHarmony address when that first came out. And I was like, I'm going to do that. Yes. And that was no. I had a panic attack every time. I freaked out every time. And I finally met a guy that I wanted to see a couple more times. And by the third time, he was putting his hands places they didn't belong. And so I made it out of there. But that triggered all my stuff. And I had an explosion of flashbacks and nightmares and extreme depression in my late 20s. And just so you know, I will be 40 on Monday, so that's been a while. And that was just a very scary time to be me, because I didn't know what post-traumatic stress disorder was. I just knew that I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I couldn't make it through a work day without crying or vibrating. I didn't want anybody to touch me, but I wanted somebody to hug me. It was just, I wanted to be anywhere that was not in my own head, because my own head was the scariest place to be. And that's a very uncertain place to be, when the place you most want to escape is you have to carry it around with you every single day. And so I started to go into what I'm going to call the dark years. I didn't know what to do with myself. God blessed me with a good, solid Christian counselor who mentored me. And for a while, I tried to say, will you pray for me here at church? Will you pray for me in my small group? Or, Dad, will you pray for me? I don't know what's going on. And instead of getting better, really, it got worse, because then I had to deal with my issues. And the more that I prayed, the more things came up. And my good Christian people were frustrated, I felt, because I wasn't getting better. They were praying, and their prayers did not seem to be getting answered. And so I felt I was letting down my church. I felt I was letting down my friends because I was having trouble doing social interactions because I wasn't sleeping. And I just didn't know how to express what was happening, because there was no social media. I couldn't just pull up on Google, what is that? Yes, I'm that old. Yes. And so it was just very difficult because PTSD has more respect now if you're in the military, but if it's just a traumatic event, people don't know what to do with you because you have big reactions to small things. And I had lots of big reactions to small things, and I didn't even know what to do with me. I didn't know what help to ask for. I had an army of family who would have shown up at the drop of a hat, but I didn't know what to ask them for. I didn't even know what I needed. But my good Christian counseling mentor woman, whose name I will protect, but God bless her, and much thanks to him for sending her into my life. She stuck with me. And just as I thought, I'm starting to get some breakthrough here. We're working on things. I'm praying about things. I'm adjusting to having these memories in my head. I didn't get to just have the migraines and the emotional and mental pain. Oh no, I got to have the physical pain too. And so in addition to all of that, my body truly felt like it was going haywire. And I was eventually diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which is a nervous condition often connected with post-traumatic stress disorder because they both feed off a malfunctioning of the fight or flight symptom. Everything is an emergency. I should be on call all the time. And because my nervous system was on call all the time, it couldn't handle regular pains, and it would magnify them to an extraordinary amount. And so I would wake up feeling like I had the flu. You know that muscle ache when you have the flu? Except I didn't have the flu. I just had the muscle ache all day, and my skin would feel like it was full of needles. Well, that's not a spectacular way to conserve energy, trying to get through the day that way, teaching 12-year-olds, while your body is miserable. And I started to have reactions, bad reactions to the medicine that was supposed to be helping me, like dramatically bad that the doctors thought I was completely nuts. Thank you, God, for my good Christian counselor who believed me. And just to give you a sampling of that, I took a very standard drug that caused me to become a compulsive bulimic during the time I was on it. And as soon as I stopped, it was done. Nobody believed that in the medical community. So I tried another one, and I was bipolar for 2 months, and that was not a good set of 2 months because I was everywhere until we were done with that. And so I had multiples of those, and I will not expound upon that further, just to let you know that there was so much going on in my head. Even when people tried to help me, I couldn't handle it because I didn't have any room left in my head. And I didn't know how to say that without offending people. I just knew it was too big. It was too much. And I literally spent a year to a year and a half just running meds. I would get on, I would have a massive physical and emotional reaction, I would get off, and I would get on, and I would get off. And my mentor would continue to say, Hannah, that's not you, get off. Hannah, that's not you, get off. Oh, Hannah, God, that's not you, get off. And I appreciated that because, again, now not just wanting to escape my mind, I wanted to escape my body too. And you can't get rid of either of those. Ultimately, because I was so debilitated by that level of pain, I lost the majority of my friends because I could no longer go do things with them. I literally had to choose on the weekends. Do I shop for groceries or do I go to church? And I had to pick groceries so I could sleep the other day and eat the rest of the week. I eventually used a wheelchair for 4 years. That's how I stayed employed. That wheelchair was one of the best things that happened to me at that time because I couldn't walk more than a few hundred feet without my entire body cramping up from the pain. And people would just find me sitting on floors, places, and it kind of unnerved them. So the wheelchair gave me some validation and it gave me some freedom of movement. But that, at the same time, that was a low point for me. I felt very lonely. I didn't know anybody else that had a wheelchair. I would get some strange looks when I would pop out of my wheelchair to use the restroom and then sit right back down in it. Like, what is she up to? And I just felt that nobody could understand, and I did. Again, I wasn't 100% sure how to explain. I was getting better at it. But it is a hard thing to say, well, yeah, I need this wheelchair, but I don't need it right now. And I would just say when it got to the worst point, I felt like I had failed. I didn't even know what I had done wrong, but I had been raised in a good family, in a good church. I loved Jesus. I knew he was for me, even though everything felt against me. And I did not understand what he thought he was doing, but I knew there was nobody else to go to. So he was staying in my life. But I just felt that I had failed. I was not living a full life. I had not managed to have any kind of family, husband, kids. I was trucking away at my job, but I was miserable. And I just wonder if Jesus' disciples, that night and that weekend when they just kind of sat by themselves, if they didn't feel that way too. If they didn't think, man, we failed Jesus. Man, why didn't we tell him not to go to Jerusalem this week? What were we thinking? How could we have had that big parade with the donkey? That was a huge mistake. If we hadn't had the parade, he might still be here. Because if that had been me, I would have sat all of Saturday and until Jesus showed up, telling myself what a horrible person I'd been and how awful this was and what had I done with my life choices. But the good news is, and oh, there is good news, God never left me. He never did. He showed me his provision every time I didn't think there was provision. Not only did I have this Christian woman counseling me and mentoring me, and my insurance was paying her. It was amazing. He always provided that one friend or that one outlet that I needed for that season. Sometimes it was a friend at work. Sometimes it was some random person I used to go to church with and I met out of nowhere, and they would pray for me for like 3 months, and we would meet, and then it would be time for somebody new because God knew I didn't have much to give back. And so I couldn't maintain for a long time, but he never bailed on me. I always could see, oh, he sent me someone here. Oh, look at that. He sent me someone here. He hasn't forgotten about me. And he did bring healing into my life, and it really was one step at a time. It was a very gradual, inside-out process. Even though what I wanted, I thought, was an outside-in process. God, if you would fix my body, I could deal with my emotions. I was backwards on that. It was easily 10 years in the making where I had to realize the reason my body has fallen apart for me is so that I cannot bury those emotions anymore. I am physically incapable of doing that, so now I have to deal with them. And I needed that because my defense mechanism was to hide them because they hurt, and I didn't like that. But I really had to get sick so that I could get better. And I eventually, through much prayer, much persistence, came to the place where I said, God, I would rather be healthy in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit than be healthy in my body. And if you never heal my body, you will then show me, I hope, how to honor you with this wheelchair and how to honor you with this limited mobility and how to honor you when I'm stuck sitting at home at night and I don't know what to do with myself, but I wish I could do something. And I would make that trade any day. It is so worth it to have your heart free and your mind at peace. So much better than being able to walk around. If you asked me to swap out, I would not do it. I would take my wheelchair back. Now, I don't want my wheelchair back. Make no mistake. I am just letting you know that that healing, that journey, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I came to know that Jesus understands me. He didn't just look down on heaven and say, good job, girl, you made it through another day. I'll see you tomorrow. No, he really understood me. And if you read the scriptural accounts, Jesus was tempted and isolated by himself. Jesus was rejected by a great number of family, friends, and church members of that day, religious leaders we call them. He took time away from the crowds. He actually needed time to himself to refill. And that was good for me to see because I sometimes felt guilty for pulling back when I needed to. Jesus was widely misunderstood. Jesus suffered all kinds of loss and pain. And as we celebrate and thank him for at Easter, he did suffer and die alone. Nobody got up and died with him for our sins. And somehow, with all of that, Jesus loved all those people who were miserable and hopeless, and he keeps on loving them. So I am here to declare that emotional and mental healing happens. It does. And I am part of the equation, and that is something I had to learn, and it was a good lesson for me. My healing was a journey. It was not ooh, God fixed my head, let's go. No, I had to seek quality medical care. Yes, God made the doctors and the pharmacists, and I love those people. I had to be responsible for taking my own medicine and finding supplementation when that medicine didn't work. I had to adjust my nutrition. I was still responsible to go to God in prayer and to at least listen to a sermon online if I couldn't make it to church anymore, and to get some sort of personal spiritual growth wherever I could find it. And I was still responsible for being self-aware, for knowing when I had pushed my body too far, or when an attack of mine was coming and I needed to do something. I had to be proactive, but I was proactive with God. He didn't just send me out there. He gave me strategies as I went. If I got stuck and said, God, I don't know what to do about this nutrition, I can guarantee you within 24 to 48 hours I had an idea I hadn't thought of, or someone sent me an idea I hadn't thought of. And on top of that, though, I was fairly content with all of that. I had learned to depend on God. I had learned how much I needed God. I was learning to address my issues as an adult and doing it with God. And I was so excited about those things, that God walked with me. And I really did not have much encouragement in the way of physical healing. After 4 years wheelchairing it 5 to 6 days a week, I didn't see that happening. I did not have big faith for that. And I had had the migraines by that point for close to 20 years. And so I didn't see that making major changes. I just figured this was how God made me, but I would get discouraged about it. Just feel that I was supposed to be doing something more, and why couldn't I do it? And I had been unable to attend church at that time as well. And so in the spring of 2015, God made provisions for me to attend a church. And it was kind of miraculous, and that's a different story. But these people are amazing. I went up for prayer every week. Every week, sometimes with the wheelchair, sometimes not. And sometimes that was a little embarrassing for me, but I just decided I'm going to be me. And if they can't love me this way, I've got to find me another church, because I have to be able to come in and be sick sometimes, but I need to be at church. And they didn't care. They said, Hannah, come up for prayer every week. Call us in the middle of the week. We will pray with you until God does something, till there is a breakthrough. And we have zero idea what his timetable is, but you keep coming. And I did for months. And I am not exaggerating about that. I am probably the most well-worn path up to the altar. Yeah, I do Saturday night church there every Saturday night. If you watch the video feed, you'll see the curly hair. Oh, there she is again. Yep, she's going up for prayer. And in May 2016, I went up for prayer, and something was different. I was not good that day. It was the middle of May. There was a week and a half left of school. My muscles hurt like nothing I had experienced in quite a while. I could hardly walk. I wasn't doing more than a couple hundred steps in a day, if that's meaningful to anybody. But that's basically you walk around your house to get some food, and you walk to the car and back. And that was hurting me. And that was also scaring me a little bit, that I was starting to be able not to do that. So I just went up for prayer for survival. I did not go up for prayer for healing. I went for prayer for survival. God, could I please make it to the end of the school year so I can sleep during June and July? That would be great. I would be so awesome with that. However, my pastor had way more faith than I did, so he was not awesome with that. He had big plans. Or God did, perhaps. My pastor has big faith for physical healing, and for whatever reason that night, he said, Hannah, we're going to go for it. We're going to go for it, girl. I mean, that man must have played for me for 20 minutes. I have no idea half of what he said anymore. But at the end of the service, God told me, you need to get home, Hannah. I'm going to burn some stuff out. Well, that's new. Okay. I'm going to get home. And I did. And I buzzed it home, turned on some worship music, laid down on my couch, and I just want to say, I thought I knew what pain was, but when God actually sends some fire to run through your body, it hurts. And I lay there just for an hour. I just saying, God, I thank you that you're healing me. Because when my pastor prayed for me, for just a moment, my faith got to join with his and absorb, it felt like to me, a little bit of his. And suddenly I knew that God did want to heal me. And how had I missed that? And God, please don't take this away. This is the most faith I've ever had. I want this. And I just tried to stay there and say, God, whatever you're trying to give me, I receive it. I don't want to put it in a box. I just want to be able to receive it. And I want to be so grateful that I can finally believe that you want to heal my body with my heart and my head. And so then I went to bed, and that was a weird experience, but God's awesome, and I grew up in a Spirit-filled church. Sometimes weird things happen. But I can tell you quite honestly, within 2 days, my pain dropped over 90%. And I was looking around. I didn't even tell anybody. I was so freaked out in a good way. I didn't even know if it was real. But within about 1 to 2 weeks, my medication dropped 50%. I have a lot of medication. I believe that's still going down. But at that time, I was taking about 60 pills a day because I had to use so much supplementation. And that's a lot of pills, I would just like to say. And so when I dropped down to 30, I was like, yes, that is nothing. Nothing. And I literally just pulled out my big gallon container of various little bottles and said, God, if you really healed me, which of these would I no longer need? And we tossed out like 3 or 4 or 5, and I never took them again. And it was great. And I really have a sense that God's not done working on that. I've hung at that 25 to 30 mark, and I think it's getting ready to go down again. So I'm excited about that. I don't know why I think that, but maybe that's that whole faith thing working in my life. Ongoing, about 10 days after that prayer, school ended, and I had been taking little test walks out in the hall. Ooh, can I walk down to the bathroom? Yes. Ooh, can I walk down to the main office? Is anybody looking? Yes. And so I got home and I put my wheelchair away. I have not gotten it out again. Not one time. But this is the part where God and I work together. So God heals my body, and he's like, great, Hannah, you have all summer to work on stamina. Okay, that's exciting. What can I do? Well, I can just sort of walk, so that's what I'm going to do. So I just every day would take a walk and see, and I would pray before I went, God, how far should I go today? And I got a little step counter because I'm a numbers girl. And so, as I told you earlier, I was only going 200 to 300 steps a day. And so the first few days, I felt like God said, go 500 steps. Okay. Hey, let's do 700 today, Hannah. Okay. How about 900? Right. And within 3 weeks, I could walk a mile, which is, just for reference, over 2,000 steps. And my chiropractor assures me that is a God thing. About 6 weeks later, I was able to navigate an entire trip to visit family in Texas all by myself. And I had never been able to do that since I got sick. I was able to navigate the airport. I was able to haul my own luggage. I was able to sit in the flight without having a panic attack. Nobody had to wheel me anywhere. And I was able to walk and meet my uncle and feel healthy and ready to spend the day with him. And that, for me, was a massive miracle. I could walk through airports. It's almost like I can walk on water, but it was airports for me. It was good. And I still have to walk it out. I still have to do my part. If I choose not to exercise, that's not God's fault. But he's given me the ability to do it, and I couldn't do it before. And so what I am particularly grateful is that Jesus came to me. I didn't show up with big faith. I didn't travel to healing seminars everywhere. I just showed up miserable. And Jesus met me right where I was. He knew where I was. He knew the hard time I had had. And I saw in the Bible that he did the same thing for his disciples when they were locked in that room, scared and unhappy and feeling bad about themselves. Again, in that chapter, John chapter 20, it says that Jesus appeared in the room. He didn't say, get out from your locked doors. Y'all are feeling sorry for yourselves. What's wrong with you? He didn't. He didn't say that to me, and he didn't say that to them. In fact, the words recorded are that he said, "Peace to you." That he knew they were afraid, that he knew they were feeling down. And he didn't hammer them or condemn them. He gave them peace. He gave them hope. And that is what I want for you as well. Because if you are not someone with dark places, you know somebody with dark places. And the dark places are a challenge when you feel like you're by yourself and there's nobody like me. And that's why I want to share my story, because there are lots of people like me. I just didn't know it. And so Jesus will meet you or your loved one wherever they are. Locked doors, dark places, people hiding in the bed because they're too depressed to come out. They don't scare him. He already knows those things. And that, I think, is the joy of Easter, that because Jesus lives, there are hope in the dark hours. Because Jesus lives, we have hope for new life. For me, this past year has been new life. I am learning to do things I thought I knew how to do, but because I hadn't done them for 10 years, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. It's very cool, actually. And just hope for change when change seems impossible. When you've had migraines for 20 years and challenging mental health situations for 10 and sat in a wheelchair for 4, let me tell you that 1, that's nobody's dream for their life, but 2, change starts to seem impossible. And I was wrong about that, because Jesus changes the unchangeable. So, thank you for taking the time to listen to me this evening. It has been my pleasure. Thank you, Pastor Jeff.